Welcome back to the Daily News Network. It's time for another edition of Business Champions. I'm Brian Sexton. Paul Lajoie is on assignment this week, and so I am filling in. We've got an entertaining and informative conversation for you today with Angelo Ponzi, the CEO of Kraft, a marketing and branding agency on the West Coast. Angelo, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you so much.
Now, thank you for joining us. And we had a little conversation pre-show, and we were talking about the difference between strategy and tactics, which is obviously an important delineation to make. Give us your perspective on those two.
Well, so I'm a fractional chief marketing officer, and when I'm typically brought into an organization, the conversation turns immediately to tactics. And my perspective is tactics are necessary, but unless you've done the strategic work up front, right? Understanding your competition, understanding the market in which you're competing, understanding your prospects, your customers, what motivates them, what are their behaviors, what are their perspectives. Without really having a clear picture of that information, the tactics are just tactics. They're not being strategic in the execution. So my belief, and has for my 35 plus years, is we have to understand the perspective of the people that you're selling to or trying to motivate versus sitting around the boardroom and talking to yourselves. And so that's kind of the real distinction that, believe it or not, a lot of companies don't think about, that they just feel they understand everything and therefore they know. And I got plenty of stories that said they don't.
You do. I would imagine in a world that's so fast-paced and ever-changing, especially in this digital universe that we all seem to live in these days, that might be one of your biggest challenges when you go into a new client, that delineation between the two and getting people on the right page, is it?
Yeah, well, again, typically when they're reaching out, there's an immediacy to what they want, right? Maybe sales are down, maybe their brand messaging is off, maybe their new competitors involved, and they want to be reactionary. And so really to talk to them and get them to understand that instead of being reactionary, if we be proactive in what we're doing, while it might take a few months to get there, there's a longer term benefit than just being reactionary. I mean, I tell people, hey, I could put a campaign out this afternoon, probably won't solve the problem, probably won't address your needs, but I could do it, but it won't be right. I'd rather do the work that we need to do to make sure it is right, because obviously you're spending money, you're doing things like that. And so as a business owner, I hate to waste dollars, and I hate to see my clients waste dollars as well.
You can barely have a conversation about business these days without the conversation turning to AI. How have you seen that impact your business in particular, and perhaps how companies are approaching branding and marketing?
Well, it's funny that you asked that question. It's not really funny, but I've spent a lot of time in AI, and I've worked for a couple companies that have developed platforms. I'm currently working with one that's developed a pricing module for e-commerce. That people are looking for short-term solutions, and the problem is they're just turning to, the channels, right? Chat or Copilot or whatever it happens to be, and they're expecting those solutions to solve their problem. But it actually takes time to figure out the prompts and what you're really trying to accomplish. And so, marketing is one of the vertical markets that's certainly been impacted by AI. About a little over a year ago, I was at a convention or a meeting, and a digital marketing person stood up and said, hey, I fired all my writers. I'm only using AI. And myself, as well as many other marketing people, thought that was a huge mistake at this point in time. AI is not ready for prime time, so no, without humans in the loop. And I think that's another thing that people are looking for, is how do I get the human aspect out of it? But I believe that there's a human aspect in there. But we're seeing more and more organizations coming out with some viable products. And so it's there. But yet I just did a survey of 50 people for an event. And out of that, only 6% actually knew that their clients were implementing some kind of AI. Only another 10% knew that their clients were investing in the future. So that left a whole lot of people that had no idea, or their clients just weren't doing it. So there's, depending on your infrastructure and what's going on, there's a lot of different aspects. But bottom line is, it's here. You're going to have to embrace it. But you need to start now to really understand what it can accomplish for you and what you want it to accomplish.
Well, and I think you said it 3 or 4 times in there, the human element. What's the human element to craft, and what you bring to the table that you don't think that AI will ever be able to replace? Hopefully there is something.
Well, there is something, right? And there's that understanding of how do you get the information, right? And how do you digest that information? It's kind of one of the areas for me is, as I have a research background, and being able to gather data. And on the flip side, as a CMO, I know how to use the data. And so there's much more broader, AI will give perspectives and things like that. But ultimately, for me, you're having to step back and to really understand from that strategic standpoint of what the real solution is, as opposed to it being automated. And depending if, you're running on a ChatGPT and it's just gathering data from all over the internet, you don't know what you're getting, right? One of the things I do is, when I do use one of those tools, I follow up after I get the data and ask, is this factual or is this assumptions? And it's a simple question, and you would be surprised how many times you think you got this great stuff, but it's all BS.
Right. You work with companies from $5 to $100 million. Is there a space that you specialize in? Is there a vertical somewhere in that? Or is your business completely agnostic? You can spread from one end of the business spectrum to the other.
Yeah, well, it is agnostic, and that just, a lot of that comes from my history. I've worked in the B2B side and I've worked in the B2C side. So manufacturing, SaaS products, for example. And on the consumer side, I've worked in apparel and alcoholic beverage and luxury goods and ice cream and restaurants and all sorts of things. And so there's a broad scope of what our experiences are in. But ultimately, a lot of the problems that companies have are very consistent, right? I need more butts in the seats. I need more traffic into my store. I need to build awareness of my brand. B2B, B2C, it doesn't really matter. So that has allowed us to kind of really go pretty broad on the vertical markets that we do. I would say our sweet spot is somewhere in that 30 to 60 million is where we seem to reside on the B2B side. On the consumer side, it could be really varied. I mean, last year, a client was $160 million. Another one was $240 million. On the consumer side. So again, it just really kind of varies on what the nature of the client is. And then there's those that don't have any money at all.
Just getting started. I see your bookcase behind you. Anything you're reading or listening to these days that you think is particularly informative, insightful, and worthy of a business person's time to try to understand what you're doing at Craft?
Sure. Well, this is going to be a shameless plug, and that's for my own book. It just got released about 6 weeks ago. It's called The Strategy Blueprint, and it really was developed based on everything we're talking about, that how can a company follow procedures and understand insights and how to use that data and why it's important in developing your strategies and your revenue growth plans. That's part of the whole deal, is how do you take all this stuff, determine where you want to be. I get things like, hey, we were a $10 million company. We've been around for 25 years, but hey, we want to be 50 million in 3 years. Well, it's like, what are you going to do differently? That's what we need to do, is put some standardizations in place to help get there. And so that's what the book is really about, is about building that foundation. Then how do you build on that foundation?
Angelo Ponzi from Craft. Where do people find the book, and where do they find you if they're interested in learning more about the strategic side of branding and marketing?
Sure. So the book is on Amazon. There's an ebook and a paperback. So just go look that up, The Strategy Blueprint. For me, the best place to connect with me is on LinkedIn. That gets you access to my website and my free, I have free courses. I have free downloads, lot of videos on my website. But LinkedIn is an easy place to kind of shoot off instead of reading off a URL.
Perfect. And we'll make sure all of that's in the show notes. Thanks so much for making a couple of minutes and sharing your story with us. The Strategy Blueprint. I'm going to order it now.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brian.
BizBuyPro supports individuals through the acquisition process in many ways. First and foremost, we can find a business for you. You come to us and you give us the parameters geographically, size, like maybe 2 million in revenue, and maybe an area you want to be a plumbing contractor, and we'll go find that for you. I think really the most important thing from BizBuyPro is after you find that business, working through the valuation, how much you're paying for it. As I always say, you don't make money when you sell, you make money when you buy.